And welcome to Nights Around the Fire, Canonsburg's #1 source for paranormal discussion. I'm glad you can join us here. Today I'm with Sue Taylor, and we have a fantastic topic. Sue, as you know, is a traveler, and she goes to locations that sometimes are designated haunted or cursed. Sue, what's on the agenda for today?
So today we're going to talk about the great city of Salem, Massachusetts.
Whoa. Now, we all kind of know about that. The great witch trials?
Witch trials of 1692.
Oh, so long ago. So what'd you find in Salem?
So I've been to Salem 4 times. Most recently was last month. And it's a very interesting little town. It's a very nice town. I've never had a bad experience every time I've been there. I've done all of the witch museum information, and it's to the point that if I go again, I want to do some of the smaller stuff. I want to do some of the stuff that's like lesser known and try to find some of the cool restaurants and stuff, because we've done all of the witch stuff. You've taught me everything that I need to know about the witch trials. It's been great, but tell me some smaller off the beaten track.
Weren't you involved in a witch trial up there?
I was, and we're going to include the picture in that. My friends and I did a live theater. It was a very small one. It was only about the size of our studio here. There were maybe 25 people in the audience, and my friends and I did a trial, and my friend who was sitting beside me successfully got me picked to be the one of the witches.
Oh, wow!
There were 3 witches. I was one of the ones who got picked. They said I had my hair purple at the time, if you look at some of our past videos, and the girl that was heading the trial said, well, this woman has been accused probably because of her unnatural hair.
There we go.
So we're going to include a picture of that fun, but it was great. My boyfriend was sitting there, and the judge, the actor who was playing the judge, appointed him as the butcher and said, well, good butcher, do you have testimony to bring against this woman? And he said, yes, I've seen her consorting with cats, and they had glowing eyes, and she speaks to the cats, and the cats do what she wants. And the judge said, well, why do you have all these cats? I said, well, the cats keep the rats out of our crops. And great, you bring out your inner theater geek. It was great. And so they then pointed to my friend's husband, and they said, you there, good farmer, can you bring testimony against this woman? And he said, yeah, I've seen her with dogs too. Like, she's got those little corgi dogs, and they have the little short legs, and they run through the air. And the judge said, the dogs were flying through the air? And I said, yeah, dogs were flying through the air, and I said, that's not natural. And she said, well, what do you have to say for all this? I said, well, first of all, we all know that the butcher cheats, and his prices are outrageous. I said, and second of all, we all know that the farmer is fond of the drink. So after I accused all of my friends of being witches, I was found guilty and was sentenced to spend the rest of my life in the Salem jail, because I said that, yes, I am a witch, because that was the thing. If you were found guilty and they asked you what you had to say about it, you would say, I'm guilty. And they would say, okay, great, you're guilty, you're a witch, you're going to spend the rest of your life in the Salem jail.
You weren't burned?
They didn't burn witches.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Explain that to people.
Okay, so we talk a lot about the burning witches thing, and I'm glad Dave brought that up, because I was going to bring that up myself. There were no witches burned in Salem. Burning witches was a European thing. And if we talk about the European witch hysteria, we're talking about potentially millions of people being killed. If we are talking about the Salem witch hysteria, we are talking about 20 people who were murdered, and 19 were hanged, and 1 was pressed to death. And, yeah, we're going to talk a lot about a gentleman by the name of Giles Corey here today. So he's got some interesting parts in this. But no one was hanged, and no one was burned in America. Salem did hanging. Europe, they did the burning.
You heard it here. Interesting. By the way, if you enjoy our content, please like, subscribe, and share our videos. We appreciate it. Okay, Sue, so I know this was pretty much based on hysteria, was it not?
It was based on hysteria, so let's talk a little bit about Salem to start out with, and we'll set the scene. Salem was founded in 1626 by the Puritans who came over from England. The Puritans wanted to purify the Church of England, which basically they wanted the Church of England to align more with their beliefs. And the Puritans were not like a kind of more mild denomination.
Oh.
They were a little bit more fanatical. They believed in the concept of original sin, which is all humans were born with sin, and it was up to God to determine what to do with you. And the Church of England was not following their doctrine the way that they wanted it followed, and they were basically annoying the Protestants.
Wow.
So they said, hey, there's this great piece of land that we've got over on the other side of the ocean. Maybe you ought to go over there. And the Puritans said, we can go over there and we can do whatever we want. And they said, you're still going to be governed by England. But yeah, you can go over there, you do whatever you want, just leave us alone. So the Puritans came over, they set up their city upon a hill theory.
Well, here we go.
They could basically do whatever they wanted. And remember, this is 1626 when Salem is established. This is long before the American Revolution, long before the separation from England, long before the Constitution, long before the Bill of Rights, long before anybody was guaranteed a right to a speedy trial. This is even long before like people like George Washington and typical American figures that we see about.
Yes.
So when you hear about these trials, like take everything you know about the American judicial system
And throw it out the window.
yeah, because it didn't exist at this time. So the Puritans there was a governor of Massachusetts, because it was the Massachusetts Bay Colony where they were set up. And there were the other New England states around it. So New York was there, Vermont was there. And some people who were accused of being witches did run to these other places. Some of them were brought back, some of them were not. And I do want to clarify, I'm using the term people and murdered because that's what happened to these people. There were no witches in Salem. There was no witchcraft being practiced. This was a hysteria that was brought on by potentially a number of reasons. But these were people that were attacked, and they were people not practicing witchcraft. They were people that were basically murdered by the system at their time.
Yeah, this is interesting because it really comes back to how fanatical religion can be when pretty much handled by people who are fanatics. And, I'm sure we have problems today. There's still factions of religions that believe one isn't doing what they should be doing. And but this was pretty much a colony that could do anything they want. They could have, they had all the law in their own hands. They had all the power. Am I right?
They did, and they believed that all of the civil and religious law were governed by God's laws. So basically, if they thought that it was what God would want to do, they could do whatever. And you'll see as we get into this, there are a lot of human undertones that creep into this. And it's not a whole lot of, God would want me to do this. Like, Dave, God would want me to accuse you of being a witch and then take your house.
So there was a little conniving going on.
Yeah.
What are the odds of that?
Yeah. So we can talk about that now. Basically, if you wanted to be accused of being a witch in 1692, which I 100% would have been accused in 1692 of being a witch, basically, if you had stuff to take, they were going to accuse you of being a witch.
So if you were wealthy, or you had land that somebody wanted, or a home somebody wanted, or a wife someone wanted, or a husband somebody wanted.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily a husband, because nobody really cared what the women wanted.
Oh.
Nobody cared about that.
I'm sure the women did, but
Women were a lot of the problems. Like, there was one woman who, she was actually very successful. She had outlived 3 husbands. She was married to her 4th husband. She ran a tavern. She had an apple orchard. And so she was considered wealthy as a woman from her past inheritances. And but she did a terrible thing, Dave.
What'd she do? What had happened?
She unbuttoned her blouse a little too low.
Scandal.
Scandal. Witch. So, that was actually, I'm talking about Bridget Bishop. Bridget Bishop was one of the first, she was actually the first person to be hanged as being a witch. And I have had lunch at the place where Bridget Bishop's Tavern once sat It's now a place called Turner Seafood, and Bridget Bishop supposedly still haunts it because she is very angry about what happened to her. And girl, as you should be, you haunt away. You do what you need to do.
Listen, we're going to post a few pictures in this video that Sue took there. So these are recent pictures.
Yeah, they're recent
Her last time there, which was in October.
And some of them are from my 2012 trip, which I will talk about in a bit why that is significant. So one thing that would get you accused of being as a witch was having things to take. The other thing was being a general pain in the butt.
Uh-oh, so you're talking someone that wasn't liked very much.
No. If you were considered an annoyance in town,
Oh.
a really good way to get rid of you was to accuse you of being a witch.
It hasn't changed today much, has it?
No, it really hasn't. If you think about it, it really hasn't. So there was a woman by the name of Sarah Good, and Sarah Good had a 4-year-old daughter, and this is a terribly sad story. And the two of them were homeless, and they were beggars, so they would go around town and beg. So, well, we've got a homeless person who keeps bothering people. What's a really great way to get rid of a homeless person?
Call her a witch.
Call her a witch. We'll put her in the jail. Problem solved. So they did just that, but they left Sarah's 4-year-old daughter, Dorothy, alone on the streets until they finally decided to write an arrest decree for Dorothy Good, who was 4 years old at the time. She was the youngest person accused of being a witch at 4 years old. And she was not only accused of being a witch, she was put in the Salem jail.
Again, this sounds very familiar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We won't go down that road on this program.
Dave will talk about it on this other channel.
Well, that's right. We have a couple other channels I want to let you know about. The David Tomsic Report and Loud and Clear. Those can be found on YouTube. I'll put links in the description box for those particular channels, and I know you'll enjoy them. Another road traveled. But let's go back to Salem.
Yeah, so let's talk about where this started. Let's go to the winter of 1692, February. So, Dave, what do you know about Massachusetts in the winter?
It's cold and snowy.
Yes, it is. So now I want you to take away all of our modern conveniences.
Oh, do I have to?
Yes, you do. So I want you to think about this. It's 1692. It's dark. It's cold. It's snowing. You don't have a TV. You don't have a furnace. You don't have the internet.
And no YouTube.
You do not have YouTube. And you're sitting there and you're basically trying to survive and you're bored. And you're not allowed to do much by Puritan standards. Like one of the accusers who was involved in this was 9 and another one was 11. Now today we would consider a 9 and an 11-year-old a child. And we would not expect much, especially from a 9-year-old. Maybe an 11-year-old would expect a little bit more, but a 9-year-old we would not expect a whole lot from. But in those days, that was different. Children were looked at differently. You were either expected, you had children so you could pass your inheritance on, and so that they could work on the farm. Or so that you could have a daughter, marry her off to somebody else, and have more land potentially.
Transactional.
Yeah, so once these kids were born, they were not necessarily considered children in the same way that we consider them. They were just little miniature adults who were supposed to do the exact same thing that adults were. So that means do your chores, come home, eat, read your Bible, and that's that. So they were bored. It's the middle of winter in New England, and they're trying to entertain themselves.
Here we go.
There was, so several of the girls were playing a game. That was Abigail Williams, Betty Parrish, and some other girls were playing a game that would determine, they were playing with an egg to determine what job their future husband would have. And they had a servant at the time whose name was Tituba. And Tituba was from the Caribbean. And she obviously brought with her some different mentalities.
Oh my.
The Puritan English.
What can go wrong here?
I'm glad you asked because a whole bunch of things did. So Tituba was accused of being a witch. She went on to be imprisoned because the girls started accusing people at random of being witches. And were claiming that they were being pricked by pins, they were being pinched, they were being scratched, that they would throw themselves on the floor, they would scream, they would crawl under furniture, they would contort themselves into positions. And they would even go so far as to claim that the specters of the people that they were accusing were harassing them. Like, Rebecca Nurse was one woman. She was in her 80s when she was arrested. And she was from a really good family in Salem town. I have been to the Rebecca Nurse homestead, and she is one of the ones that after she was executed, her family took her body back to the homestead and buried her somewhere there, rather than leave them where they were. But they put her in jail, and they claimed that her spirit was still coming out of the jail and was harassing them and was still coming at them. So the Puritans did the very next logical thing. They draped 80-something-year-old Rebecca Nurse in chains in the jail cell, and they followed this up with more logic. They charged her for the chains, and they charged everyone for their chains, for their food, and for their lodging in the prison.
Well, folks, talk about entrepreneurial. Those people up there had a way of getting ahead on somebody else's dime. So, Sue, we have a lot of people, me included, have some preconceived notions about Salem. And, of course, you mentioned no one's getting burned up there. But at what point was it the worst time to be in Salem?
So it was really that summer of 1692 that it got bad. And that was when there were 20 people executed as witches. There were 19 people hanged, and there was one gentleman by the name of Giles Corey who was pressed to death. And by pressed to death, that means they took Giles Corey out into a field, which I have been to the area where he was pressed to death. And I guess we'll get into this now. This is one of the stories as to why people think that Salem was cursed. And I had a teacher in school who thought that Salem was cursed. So Giles Corey was taken out. He was placed on the ground. There was a board placed on him, and they kept putting weights on him. Now, the reason all of this happened was because when they went to arrest Giles Corey went, I know why you're here. I understand why you're here. Good news, it wasn't me. It was my wife. And they went, cool, we're going to arrest her too, but we're also going to arrest you. Because again, Giles Corey was a bit of a pain in the butt. And his wife had questioned the validity of the claims that were being tossed around, and Giles Corey kind of thought it was crazy. So they didn't like that. So they took Giles Corey in before the judge, Judge John Hawthorne, and they said, Giles, how do you plead? Do you plead guilty or do you plead innocent? Because if you're guilty, we're going to send you to jail. If you're innocent, we're going to put you on trial and we're probably going to hang you. So, like, you're in a catch-22 here. And Giles went, meh. I don't want to talk about this with you people. So he didn't plead. So because he didn't plead, they all went, well, this is a situation we've not had occur before, so we've got to figure something out. So they pressed him to get a confession out of him. So as they were putting more stones on him, they kept saying to him, Giles Corey, how do you plead? And he said, the logical thing in this situation, more weight. More weight. The man wasn't going to do it. And the reason he wasn't going to plead was because Giles Corey was an elderly man, and he had worked very hard to build his land in the area. And if Giles Corey was convicted of being a witch, they took his property and they would not allow it to pass on to his descendants.
Oh, okay.
Because if you were convicted of being a witch, your inheritance was taken from your family and your will was null and void, and it was given to the officials. Okay, so the sheriff, whose name was Jonathan Corwin, who was not a particularly nice gentleman, and we can talk about that in a minute, he was first in line to pick out what he wanted from the accused witches' estates. So he got first dibs. If you were accused of being a witch and you were convicted, he got first dibs on your estate.
Wow. So that's because he was sheriff.
Yes, and then it kind of went to the other officials in town. So this is why, if you had stuff to take, you were very popular.
So if you can keep low profile, you might be able to get past this?
Yeah, you could be okay, because not even being like a good citizen could get you, because they accused one of the former ministers of the church and hanged him. Despite the fact that he...
Hang him!
Despite the fact that he could recite the Lord's Prayer at his hanging, which a witch was not supposed to be able to do. And the crowd said, he's doing it, you gotta stop, we can't kill him, he's not a witch. And the officials went, watch us.
You heard it here. That's brutality at its peak.
Terrible brutality. Like, they were actually, I'll keep my personal opinions out of this, but it's really some terrible stuff. And it was not good. So to any Puritan ghost who may listen to me right now, shame on you. Shame on you.
Okay. So you mentioned that there's definitely a lot of conniving going on behind the scenes, a lot of it to get people's property. How bad did this get then to a point where maybe people try to put a stop to it? What went on after this 1692, which was the worst year, right?
It was the worst year. So do you want to hear the story of do you want to hear what happened to Mr. Corey? And
yes.
He got some revenge on the town, potentially?
Okay.
We talk a lot about cursed towns here. There's a lot of joking about cursed towns, but here's a really good case for a cursed town. So, the sheriff goes up to Giles Corey, who's being pressed to death, who is almost dead. Remember, he's in his 80s.
Okay.
And he says to him, Giles Corey, how do you plead? And Giles Corey looks at the sheriff and he says to him, I curse you and I curse this whole town. And dies. So, after that, Sheriff Corwin went on to die young. Died at under 30, which was not terribly uncommon at that time.
Well, considering the guy he had murdered died at 80.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, like, he dies under 30. And from that point on, up until about 1991, all of these sheriffs who served in the sheriff's office that was near the location where Giles Corey was pressed to death died young in office.
Wow.
And then when they moved the sheriff's office out of Salem town, to the neighboring town for the county, everything was fine.
It was after 1991. That's 1692. Well, really 1692 to 1991.
Yeah, that's...
Who would want to be sheriff? Did anybody notice this right away?
I don't know about that, but I have actually heard that. So I heard that first on a ghost tour when I was in Boston years ago, probably about 10, 15 years ago now. And then I heard it again. You're going to see a picture on your screen of a gentleman wearing a black coat and hat. That is a man named Jeff. He was our tour guide on our second ghost tour that we took there. Our other ghost tour was a gentleman by the name of Sebastian. And they were both excellent ghost tours. I will give the links for the tours that we took, but kudos to both of them. They were great tour guides.
That's good. Okay, so yeah, I mean, listen, folks. If someone said, hey, we got a job for you. You can be sheriff of Salem. You might not live past 35, but while you're sheriff, you have a nice salary and a nice place to live. I would say, I'll tell you what. No.
No, thank you. I'm busy that day.
Yeah, I won't be here.
I'm sure they had a lot of write-in candidates for
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Here it goes. If you want to get rid of somebody, make them sheriff.
Maybe that's an argument. Maybe Giles Corey really was a witch. Maybe he really did implement the ultimate like witch's curse on Salem.
Wow.
But yeah, when I heard that story the second time when we were up there, I went, okay, this is a very valid case for a first down.
Now, unlike our video on Lake Lanier, you can see that on YouTube, Nights Around the Fire. One of the most cursed lakes in the country, right? We didn't think so here on Nights Around the Fire. So we don't believe it was cursed. But listening to Salem, yeah, that might be a cursed town.
Might be a cursed town. So do you want to hear about what stopped it?
Oh, I think our audience would love to know what stopped this madness.
It truly was madness. And we'll talk about some of the potential causes here in a second. But what stopped it was they accused the governor of Massachusetts' wife of being a witch.
Oops.
And so the governor of Massachusetts said, because remember, this hysteria was spreading down as far as Boston at this point. And the governor of Massachusetts found out his wife was being accused and came down there and basically said, all right, all of you knock this off. And they said, yeah, we're not going to do that. And he said, okay, here's a fun fact. I have authority of the government of England and the monarchy of England. You all are going to knock this off, or we're going to have a big problem. And the Puritans went, funny, just kidding. Nobody's a witch. There are no witches.
It's okay.
We're all good here.
On second thought.
Never mind. Never mind.
Yeah, there'd be maybe some disappearances from that.
Yeah. So they stopped and they went to the people who were imprisoned, both in Boston and in the Salem jails, and they said, well, we have some good news for you. No one's a witch. No one's a witch. There was never a witch. There was never a witch trial. Nothing.
It never happened.
You guys, your names are all cleared. This is great news, but we've got a slight situation. You guys owe us a bill for your food, your lodging, and anything else that was provided to you while you were in jail. So you still couldn't get out of jail
until you paid.
You paid your bill.
And of course, they took all their property.
They took their property. There were some families that it took them years to get their family members out of jail, even though they were innocent. They couldn't get them out because they couldn't pay the bill.
Wow. Yeah, we got some reflections here about that today.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite the mess, and the Puritans did the very mature thing after all of this settled down, and that was say that nothing happened.
Nothing to see here.
Not one thing happened here. Now you are going to see a picture on your screen of a little memorial area. It was created for the 20 victims who were murdered. They have done a really nice job with it. It is right outside of one of the cemeteries in Salem, because remember, the people who were accused were no longer eligible to receive a Christian burial. So once they were executed, their bodies were dumped in a shallow grave and they were forgotten about. And we don't know what happened to all of them. Some were taken back to the family homesteads and buried there. Their families came back for them after dark. But they did do this memorial where they have benches along the sides. It's a little, like, partial rectangle kind of deal. And they have little benches with everybody's name around the square, and people will come and put flowers on them. And the trees that are hanging over the area are the same types of trees that the witches were hanged in, to which my boyfriend proudly declared, boy, I bet the ghost loved that.
Well, I'm sure Dustin probably was right.
Mm-hmm. And we've got a story that I'll tell you in just a second about some ghost stories from up there.
Okay, so before we move on to that, you mentioned, Sue, that there were some maybe extraordinary things happening that might have caused these people to flip out their minds. So what's that about?
Well, one of them was a very natural human thing. It's called boredom. And well, like we talked about earlier, it was cold, it was dark, you were trying to survive, you were stressed out. They didn't know what stress was at the time. And so they were some of these girls admitted that they created these stories just to entertain themselves, and it got out of hand. One of the girls actually addressed the congregation later on that included the family of Rebecca Nurse, who was one of the women who was hanged as a witch. And they said, sorry, it got away from me. I truly asked for forgiveness. I asked for forgiveness from the congregation and from God, but, it wasn't real. None of this stuff actually happened.
Okay, well,
So that's one.
I know there's more here.
There's one potential cause. Another potential cause is there was an agent that they used to make bread, and it could have fermented in such a way that it caused hallucinations. So that is another potential.
For the whole town.
Yeah, that it could have been. And I mean, if you think about it, like you think about food storage at that time and like potentially what they were cooking with and what they were using, it's not unbelievable that some sort of agent could have connected in there that maybe caused some sort of issue with the human body.
If anybody knows British culinary skills, don't know that they have much except for fish and chips. So, sorry, I mean, I was never a big fan of a lot of stuff from Europe, except Italy. But, so yeah, who knows what could have happened there then. Okay, so what are some of the stories you have about ghosts?
So these are kind of some personal ghost stories. I could tell you ghost and haunting stories that have been told to me all day about Salem, because with all of the negativity that happened in Salem, there's obviously a lot of energy there. And what makes ghosts? Energy. So there's a ton of hauntings, there's a ton of ghost tours, there's a ton of stories you can hear about a ton of different buildings. These are two that happened to me personally when I was up there. The first time was back in 2012, and my friend and I took a ghost tour that I don't believe exists anymore, where they would give you the equipment that you could go and check around and look for the ghosts. And we were at a site that it's now an office building. We were up there again this past trip and heard some different stories. It's actually in the area where they believe that Sarah Good and her daughter would have frequented when they were begging on the streets. And there's actually reports of people feeling like a tug on their pant leg, like a small child tugging on their pant leg. So there's kind of some theories that might be Dorothy Good still looking for her mom all these years later. And I was sitting here. The building was kind of in front and off to my right of me. And it was obviously after dark. And we're sitting there. The ghost guide and my friend had their back to the building. And I'm looking at the building. And all of a sudden, the lights in the building go off. Like, it goes from, like, fully lit to dark. And I went, whoa. And my friend looked at me, and the tour guide looked at me, and I said, the lights in the building just went off. And I realize now that they could have just been on a timer or something. So it may not actually have been paranormal, but at the time, it was pretty creepy. So that's one of my favorite stories. The second story is from our last trip up there, and I have no explanation for this one. There's no valid explanation. We told our tour guide, Sebastian, about this one, and he was amazed too. He said there'd actually been a lot of activity around it. So we were in the memorial ground right outside of the cemetery, and that's where he said that there had been a lot of activity in the last few nights. So we are standing kind of facing the tour guide who has his back to the cemetery. My boyfriend is standing to my left, and we're kind of spaced out in the group because there had been a nor'easter come through the day before, so there was a lot of water on the ground, so we were trying to avoid puddles, and there was a gigantic puddle in front of us, so we were all kind of like lined up against the little like chain link thing that was there to keep us off the grass. So my boyfriend had a backpack on, and he felt two tugs on his zipper pull like someone was trying to open his backpack. And he looked over at the woman who was standing to his left, and she wasn't doing anything. And he looked at me, and I was not doing anything. And so he said, oh, well, it's clear I must have just bumped it up against the chain fence that is behind me. It's nothing. Then he took a step back and realized that the chain fence was hitting him on the butt, and his backpack was up here. So there was no possible way that the zipper pull that was being pulled on could have caught on that chain and pulled. So believe what you want, but we believe that something pulled his backpack while we were standing there that night.
Wow. Fascinating. Folks, we've experienced a lot of things here on Nights Around the Fire. And of course, we're going to try to bring more ghost stories into our videos. Don't forget, if you enjoy our content, Sue and Ashley and me, please like, subscribe, and share our videos. We're going to put links in the description box to videos that we think you might like and kind of attached to this. Don't forget, we have a sister channel, besides Nights Around the Fire, channel I'm on, Loud and Clear, and the David Tomsic Report. If you like politics, you like economic information broken down, it's the place for you to be. Don't forget, we've got more coming forward. What do you think, Sue, our next video is going to be?
Our next video could be anything, but we know that you guys really like our friend Ken, the ghost hunter.
Yes.
Which is cool because we like our friend Ken too. So we have talked to Ken about setting up some time to come back and do a Haunted Pittsburgh Part 2. So Ken and hopefully our friend Becky will be able to jump in and join us and tell some stories about their second most haunted areas in town.
I know we have a whole list of requests from people out there, from you folks. Thank you. Please comment. Tell us what you like, what you want to know. I think Ashley is preparing her Dangers of Artificial Intelligence video. We'll be filming that real soon. There's so much more. We're going to be hitting some sites in Greene County.
Yes, there is. So Greene County is one of Pennsylvania's most haunted counties, apparently. And I had a very interesting conversation with a friend a couple of weeks ago about some hauntings and UFO sightings down in Greene County.
Interesting.
Yeah, so if you know anything, if you saw or if you heard any family members tell stories about a UFO sighting in Greene County, I want to hear about it. And also, we are going to see if we can get into the Foundry down in Greene County and do some ghost hunting with our ghost hunter buddies.
Sounds like a lot coming up. Please stay tuned. Don't forget that we want to hear from you. Like the video. That helps us with the algorithm to get it out to more people. I hope you have a very great Thanksgiving. If we don't see you before that, God bless you. And we'll see you next time right here on Nights Around the Fire. Take care.